Some decisions don't feel real until the moment after you make them. The pen had been steady in her hand. The ink had flowed without hesitation. No trembling, no pause. Just a clean, precise motion. Elegant for something so irreversible. But the moment it was done, the moment the pen left the paper, something shifted. Not around her, inside her. The elevator ride down felt longer than it should have. Too quiet, too smooth. The mirrored walls reflected a version of herself she didn't recognize anymore. The crimson dress still clung perfectly to her body, but now it felt different. Not like armor, like a costume, one she couldn't take off. When the doors finally opened, the world didn't greet her. It swallowed her. The lobby stretched wide and empty, her heels echoing against the polished floor like a metronome counting down something unseen. Each step felt heavier. Not physically, something deeper, as if the weight of that signature had followed her out of the room and settled into her bones. Then the doors opened, and the cold hit her. Sharp, immediate, unforgiving. The kind of cold that doesn't belong to weather, but to reality. Her breath caught for a second as the night air wrapped around her skin, slipping beneath the fabric of her dress like a quiet reminder. You are not who you were an hour ago. New York stretched before her, alive, endless. But tonight, it didn't feel alive. It felt aware. The lights didn't glow. They watched. Rows of golden reflections shimmering on wet pavement, flickering like eyes tracking her movement. Predatory, calculating, knowing. Her heels struck the ground again. Click, click, click. Each step too loud, too clear, as if the city itself was amplifying her presence, marking her. She kept walking, because stopping would mean thinking, and thinking would mean feeling. A siren echoed in the distance, long, hollow, almost mournful. The scent of rain lingered in the air, mixing with the cold metal breath of the city. Everything felt sharper, louder, closer. Then her hand moved, almost on instinct. Her fingers tightened around her phone as she pulled it out, the screen lighting up her face in the darkness. There was only one thing left to confirm. One final piece of the transaction. She dialed, held the phone to her ear, waited. The line connected. A voice spoke on the other side, distant, muffled, but she barely heard the words, because she already knew what they would say. Safe, cleared, gone. Just like that. Her father was free. Years of risk, of pressure, of looming collapse, erased. And yet, her chest didn't loosen. Her breath didn't steady, because the relief never came. Instead, something colder settled in its place. Her fingers slowly lowered the phone, her arm falling back to her side like it no longer belonged to her. She stood still, in the middle of the city, surrounded by movement, by noise, by life, and felt none of it. Because somewhere between that office and the street, something had changed. This wasn't sacrifice. It wasn't even choice. It was a transaction. Something had been given. Something had been taken. And the balance was final. She inhaled slowly, the cold air filling her lungs, lingering, sharp, irreversible. Her name was still hers. Her thoughts, her voice, still hers, but her sovereignty was gone, and deep down, she could feel it, like a phantom presence, a quiet echo of that moment, that signature, still pulsing beneath her skin. She took another step, then another, walking forward without direction, without purpose, because there was no going back, only forward, toward something she didn't fully understand yet. And somewhere in the darkness ahead, something waited. The price had been paid. Echo. Some places don't forget you. even when you're ready to leave them behind. She stood in front of the door longer than she should have. The key rested between her fingers, cold and familiar. It had opened this lock 100 times before. Maybe more. Automatic. Thoughtless. Routine. But tonight, nothing felt automatic. Her hand hovered in the air for a moment, just inches from the lock. And something inside her resisted. Not fear. Something quieter. Something heavier. Recognition. Because this wasn't just a door. It was a threshold. The final line between who she had been and what she had just agreed to become. The metal slid into place with a soft click. Louder than it should have been. Sharper. Like the sound carried meaning now. She turned the key. Slowly. The lock gave way. And the door opened. Darkness greeted her. Still. Silent. Waiting. The apartment hadn't changed. Not really. The same narrow space. The same worn furniture. The same quiet hum of a place that had never demanded more than survival. But something felt wrong. The air hit her first. Familiar. Too familiar. Stale coffee lingering in the corners. Old books stacked unevenly on shelves that leaned slightly under their weight. Cheap laundry detergent embedded into fabric that had been washed too many times. It was the scent of her life. And suddenly, it felt small. A sharp contrast to what still clung faintly to her skin. That other scent. Dark wood. Clean leather. Power. She exhaled slowly and stepped inside. The door closed behind her with a quiet sound that felt final. For a moment, she didn't move. Just stood there, listening. The apartment was silent. Not empty. Not abandoned. Haunted. Not by anything supernatural, but by memory. Every object in the room felt like a relic. A fragment of someone who no longer existed. She moved slowly, almost carefully, like she was afraid the space might react if she moved too fast. The bed was exactly as she left it. The chair by the window still slightly angled toward the light. The coffee mug on the table with a faint ring dried into the surface beneath it. Proof that she had lived here, that she had been real. Her gaze landed on the suitcase resting on the bed. Black. Simple. Empty. One suitcase. That was all she was allowed to take. The realization settled quietly into her chest. Not sudden. Not violent. Just final. She walked toward it. Sat on the edge of the bed. Opened it. The zipper sound cut through the silence like something too loud for the moment. Inside, nothing. A space waiting to be filled. Or reduced. Her hand moved first. Instinct again. She reached for the sweater draped over the chair. Worn. Soft. Familiar. It still carried the shape of her. The memory of her. She held it for a second longer than necessary. Then folded it. Placed it inside the suitcase. Carefully. Like it mattered. Next came the photograph. Her fingers hesitated when she picked it up. Her mother's smile stared back at her from another time. Another life. One that hadn't been defined by survival. Or negotiation. Or surrender. A life where she had been just a person. Not a solution. Not a debt. Her thumb traced the edge of the frame. Slow. Deliberate. Then she placed it inside the suitcase. And just like that, it became smaller. Everything became smaller. Memories compressed. Identity reduced. She stood again. Moved toward the bathroom. The mirror waited. Cracked slightly in one corner. A fracture running through her reflection like something symbolic she didn't want to understand. She looked at herself. Really looked. The red lipstick was still there. Perfect. Unmoved. A detail from earlier. From another version of the night. But now, it didn't look the same. It looked deliberate. Like a mark. Her fingers lifted. Pressed against her lips. She turned on the faucet. Water rushed into the sink. Cold. Sharp. She leaned forward, tried to wash it away, but it didn't disappear. It smeared, spread, red against pale skin, uneven, persistent, a stain. Her breath caught slightly. She tried again, harder this time, but it only made it worse. Because some things don't wash away, some things linger. She stared at herself for a long moment, water dripping from her chin, from her fingers. The reflection didn't look like her anymore. It looked like someone marked, owned. She turned off the faucet. Silence rushed back in, thicker than before. She walked back into the main room, looked around one last time. The apartment hadn't changed, but she had. That was the difference. Her hand reached for the light switch. Click. Darkness swallowed one side of the room. Click. Another piece disappeared, until only shadows remained. The space felt smaller now, further away, like it was already forgetting her. She picked up the suitcase. The handle felt heavier than it should, not because of what was inside, because of what wasn't. She walked to the door, opened it, paused, just for a second, not to look back, but to feel it, the final moment. Then she stepped out. The hallway stretched empty around her, cold, silent, watching. The door closed behind her, and just like that, she was gone. Downstairs, a black car waited, engine running, patient, like it had been sent to collect something that no longer belonged to itself. She didn't hesitate, didn't stop, didn't turn back, because she already knew the truth. She hadn't just left an apartment. She had left a life. And somewhere between that door and that waiting car, she had become something else entirely. A ghost. In her own story. Some journeys don't take you somewhere. They take you away. The door closed behind her with a muted sound. Not loud. Not dramatic. Final. The world outside didn't disappear. It was filtered. Muted voices. Distant movement. Blurred lights. The city was still there, but it no longer reached her. The interior of the car wrapped around her like something deliberate. Black leather stretched across every surface, smooth and perfect. Untouched. Unlived. It smelled different inside. Not like a place. Not like a memory. Expensive leather. Cold air. Precision. Luxury. But there was no warmth in it. Her fingers moved slowly across the seat beside her. The texture was flawless. Soft. Controlled. And completely impersonal. The partition slid into place with a quiet mechanical sound, sealing her in. The driver disappeared. Not physically, but functionally. He became a silhouette, a shape behind glass. Not a person, a mechanism. The engine hummed softly beneath her. The movement began. Smooth, almost unnatural. The car didn't feel like it was driving through the city. It felt like it was gliding through something else entirely. Outside, the world was loud. Traffic surged through the streets. People moved quickly along sidewalks. Voices overlapped. Lights flickered. Life. Messy. Uncontrolled. Real. Inside, there was nothing. No sound. No disruption. No imperfection. Only silence. The kind of silence that presses against your thoughts until they become louder than they should be. She turned her head slightly, looked through the tinted glass. People passed by, walking, talking, laughing, unaware of how fragile everything they had really was, unaware of how quickly it could all be taken or traded. Her reflection appeared faintly in the glass, layered over the city behind it. Two versions of the same world. One she used to belong to, and one she had just entered. The difference wasn't distance. It was detachment. A subtle shift, but absolute. She watched a couple cross the street. Close. Careless. Alive. For a moment, something inside her tightened. Not regret. Something sharper. Recognition. Because she had been that person once. Before everything became calculated. Before everything became a transaction. The car turned smoothly. No sudden movements. No interruptions. Controlled. Always controlled. Her eyes shifted toward the front. Toward the driver. He didn't move. Didn't speak. Didn't acknowledge her presence. Just sat there. Rigid. Focused. A function. An extension of something larger. Of someone larger. The realization settled slowly. This wasn't a ride. It was a delivery. And she wasn't a passenger. She was the cargo. The thought lingered longer than it should have. Her fingers tightened slightly against the leather. And her mind drifted back. The pen. The paper. The moment. It replayed again. And again. And again. Clean. Precise. Irreversible. Her breath slowed. But her thoughts didn't. Because something else had started to creep in. A question. Small at first. Then louder. Then impossible to ignore. Was he watching? Her eyes lifted slowly. Scanning the interior. The corners. The seams. The reflections in the glass. Anywhere a lens could exist. Hidden. Silent. Observing. The thoughts settled deeper. Arthur Vance didn't strike her as the kind of man who trusted chance. Control wasn't something he preferred. It was something he required. Her gaze lingered on the dark surface above her. Still. Silent. Watching? Or just waiting? The paranoia wasn't loud. It didn't scream. It whispered. And that made it worse. Outside, the city began to fade. Lights became fewer. Buildings lower. Movement slower. The chaos dissolved into distance. Replaced by something quieter. Something emptier. The transition was gradual, but undeniable. The world she knew was disappearing, and something else was taking its place. Something controlled, isolated, designed. The car slowed, not abruptly, not sharply, deliberately. Ahead, the gates appeared, massive, dark, waiting, not welcoming, accepting. The engine idled. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the sound. Mechanical. Heavy. The gates began to open. Slowly. Metal against metal. A sound that felt too final for something so simple. The car moved forward again, crossing the threshold. And behind her, the gates closed. Not slamming. Not snapping. Sealing. The sound echoed longer than it should have. And in that moment, she understood. This wasn't a place you entered. It was something you were absorbed into. Something you didn't leave. Her reflection stared back at her from the dark glass. Faint. Distorted. Still her. But not the same. Because somewhere between the city and these gates, something had changed. Something irreversible. And whatever waited beyond that road was already expecting her. The car did not arrive at a home. It descended into one. The city disappeared behind her in fragments of reflected light as the vehicle curved down a private ramp hidden beneath the monumental geometry of Arthur Vance's residential tower. The glass and steel structure above had looked almost unreal from the street, too pristine, too vertical, too perfectly illuminated to belong to the same world as traffic, rainwater, and ordinary human fatigue. But down here, beneath it, the illusion of civilization fell away completely. The underground garage was not a garage. It was a vault, a cathedral built for machines. White light flooded every surface with surgical precision, turning polished concrete and black stone into something almost sterile. There was no trace of daylight, no trace of weather, no trace of life beyond the faint mechanical hum of hidden systems breathing through the walls. The cars parked in precise alignment looked less like vehicles and more like curated artifacts, cold, expensive bodies of glass and metal resting beneath immaculate light, as if they had never known dirt, speed, or accident. Nothing here felt used. Everything felt preserved, controlled, untouched by human mess. Even sound behaved differently in that place. The engine softened into silence. The door locks released with a quiet click. Then stillness. No shouting. No traffic. No footsteps from strangers. No music leaking from neighboring apartments. No reminder that other people existed beyond this subterranean chamber of luxury and surveillance. The driver stepped out first. She watched his silhouette move past the tinted glass, dark and composed, before her door opened from the outside. He said nothing. Of course he said nothing. By now, his silence no longer felt like professionalism. It felt ideological. A rule of the world she had entered. Arthur's world did not explain itself. It simply arranged itself around her and expected obedience. Cool artificial air touched her skin as she stepped out of the car. The crimson dress seemed almost violent under the white lights. Up on the street, it had looked elegant, deliberate, dangerous. Down here, reflected against stone and steel and pale illumination, it looked different. Raw, too bright, too alive, like a wound carried into a sterile operating room. A stain moving through a kingdom built on pristine surfaces. The driver closed the door behind her with measured care, then gestured toward a corridor at the far end of the garage. No words, only direction. She followed. Her heels struck the floor with a sound that seemed to travel too far. Sharp, isolated. Every step announced her presence to a place that did not need noise to observe. Cameras were everywhere, though she could not always see them. She felt them in the angles of the ceiling, in the black seamless corners, in the invisible logic of the architecture. Surveillance here was not crude. It was elegant, embedded, the kind that did not need to reveal itself to be effective. The corridor narrowed as they walked, the monumental openness of the garage giving way to a passage lined in dark glass and brushed metal. Light strips ran along the base of the walls, turning the floor into a path of quiet radiance. It should have felt grand. It should have felt luxurious. Instead, it felt suffocating. Not because the space was small, because it was deliberate. There was no randomness anywhere, no imperfection. No sign of life left behind by accident. No crooked picture frame, no fingerprint on glass, no coffee stain, no discarded object proving that someone here lived instead of ruled. The absence of disorder became its own form of pressure. At the end of the corridor, the elevator waited. Its doors were transparent, not mirrored, not metallic, transparent. For a second, she stood still, unable to move closer. The structure enclosing it was all glass, a vertical capsule suspended against the interior spine of the building. Beyond it, through layers of engineered transparency, the city shimmered at a distance, cold blue light, geometric windows, ribbons of headlights threading through the dark. The elevator looked elegant in the way expensive traps often do, beautiful enough to make refusal seem irrational. The driver stepped aside. Again, not a word. As if his role ended at delivery. As if what happened after this belonged to another tier of Arthur's will. She entered the glass enclosure alone. The doors slid shut behind her with barely a sound. And suddenly there was nowhere to look except outward. Or inward. Both felt dangerous. The elevator began to rise. At first, the motion was so smooth, she only noticed it in her stomach. A subtle pull. Then gravity shifted more decisively beneath her ribs, a quiet downward pressure as the floor carried her upward through the tower. The garage dropped away beneath her in perfect symmetry, white light shrinking, black machines becoming abstract shapes, architecture reducing itself into pattern. Then the city opened. Not all at once. Slowly. Vertically. Floor by floor, the world unfolded beneath her like a map losing its humanity. Streets became lines of light. Buildings became cold, illuminated blocks. Windows became glittering data points suspended in the night. The higher she rose, the less the city resembled a place where people lived, suffered, loved, lied, and survived. It became an organism of light and geometry. Vast. Indifferent. Beautiful in a way that made the human body feel inconveniently fragile. She stood in the middle of the transparent cabin and felt, with sudden and suffocating clarity, that she was no longer ascending through a building. She was being lifted into a throne room, into a vertical kingdom built above the ordinary world. The sensation should have felt expansive. Instead, it felt claustrophobic. The glass around her offered visibility without freedom. She could see everything, but touch nothing. The city stretched in all directions, but she was sealed inside a moving cage. A bird suspended in transparent luxury, rising higher and higher while gravity reminded her that falling was always possible. Her reflection emerged in the glass as the exterior lights deepened. At first it was faint, just a ghost laid over the skyline. Then clearer. And she looked. Really looked. The woman staring back at her did not resemble the one who used to fumble with grocery bags, fall asleep over spreadsheets, or laugh tiredly at midnight with cold coffee in hand. This woman stood upright in crimson silk beneath engineered light, carried upward through a private tower because a signature had made her transferable. The dress cut through the blue glow of the city like blood under ice. A wound against glass. A mark impossible to mistake. She lifted one hand, almost unconsciously, and touched the side of the elevator. The glass was cool beneath her fingertips. Solid. Perfect. Transparent enough to promise openness, strong enough to deny it. She thought, absurdly, of museums again. Of precious things displayed where they could be admired, studied, protected, and never truly free. Her throat tightened. Her father. The thought came without warning, more painful for how quickly it rearranged everything. Was he safe now? Not theoretically. Not legally. Actually safe. Breathing easier somewhere tonight because of what she had done? Sleeping without fear of ruin at the edge of his bed? Had the phone call been enough? Was relief somewhere already unfolding in another part of the city while she rose toward this silent kingdom? Or had she only exchanged one form of danger for another, moving the threat from his life into her own with the kind of transaction no one ever fully understands until it is too late? She closed her eyes for one brief second. Was it worth it? The question had no mercy in it now. No romance. No drama. Just the brutal simplicity of consequence. If he was truly safe, if the pressure on his chest had lifted, if his future had been pulled back from collapse, then perhaps yes. But the word did not come cleanly, because she could already feel the cost settling into her body. This tower, this silence, this immaculate ascent, this sense that she was not arriving anywhere so much as surrendering to a structure that had been waiting for her all along. She had traded her world for this. Not just her apartment, her routines, her familiar streets. Something deeper. Scale. Noise. Choice. The right to belong horizontally among other lives. Now everything around her was vertical. Hierarchical. Elevated. Ordered by access and height and invisible permission. Down there was the city, messy, imperfect, ordinary, alive. Up here was Arthur's domain, removed from weather and friction, suspended so high above the rest of the world it could pretend to be untouched by it. The elevator kept rising. The numbers changed silently. The night outside darkened further, and with it her reflection sharpened until it nearly replaced the city beyond. For one disorienting second, she seemed to be floating in blackness, the skyline broken around her, her own image suspended against the void. A stranger in red. A figure carried by forces already decided. Then the elevator slowed. A soft deceleration. Barely perceptible, yet enough to tighten every muscle in her body. Her pulse shifted. The air felt different. Not physically. Instinctively. The way animals seem to know when they are approaching the center of another predator's territory. A single tone sounded. Quiet. Refined. Final. The elevator stopped. For one suspended heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the doors opened. Warmth reached her first, not temperature exactly, but atmosphere. A darker air. Richer. Human. Lived in by power. Then scent. Sandalwood. Expensive whiskey. Something smooth and aged and unmistakably masculine, threaded through with the quiet burn of wealth so old it no longer needed to announce itself loudly. It hit her before the room itself fully came into focus. And instantly she knew. He was near. Not because she saw him. Because the space had already changed around his presence. The foyer beyond the elevator was vast, hushed, and impossibly refined stone, glass, shadow, soft amber light falling across clean lines and monumental surfaces. It looked less like the entrance to a home and more like the threshold of a private empire. Yet all of that registered only after the scent, after the instinct, after the realization that somewhere just beyond this first immaculate room was the man whose gravity had already begun pulling her life out of its former orbit. She did not step out immediately. For one breath, she remained inside the transparent cage, staring into the foyer as though the elevator had delivered her not to a residence, but to a verdict. Then, slowly, she crossed the threshold, and the doors whispered shut behind her. The elevator doors closed behind her with a whisper so soft it barely sounded real. Then silence returned. Not ordinary silence. Not the familiar kind that belonged to empty apartments, sleeping streets, or lonely hallways after midnight. This silence felt curated, designed. It settled over the penthouse foyer like another architectural choice, as deliberate as the stone beneath her feet or the amber light suspended high above her. It did not suggest absence. It suggested control. For one still moment, Isabella did not move. The air itself felt different here. Perfectly regulated. Perfectly cooled. Neither warm nor cold, but balanced with such clinical precision that it almost seemed inhuman. It carried none of the rough edges of the outside world, no trace of rain, traffic, concrete, dust, or life. Only the faint lingering scent that had greeted her the moment the elevator opened. Sandalwood, expensive whiskey, polished wood, and something darker beneath it, something so subtle it felt less like fragrance and more like residue. Presence. Authority. A man reduced into atmosphere. Her first step forward disappeared into the rug. The sensation startled her. After the hard surfaces of the garage, the corridor, the elevator, the softness beneath her heels felt almost intimate. The rug was impossibly thick, the fibers swallowing sound and weight alike, so that even the sharp rhythm of her steps was subdued into something muted, hesitant. It made her feel strangely unsteady, as if the penthouse were swallowing every sign of her entrance, refusing to let her make a mark on it. She moved slowly. The scale of the room was the first thing that refused to fit inside her mind. The foyer was not large in the ordinary sense. It was colossal. The ceilings rose so high they dissolved into shadow before the eye could comfortably claim them. The walls stretched upward like the interior of a cathedral stripped of religion and rebuilt in the language of wealth. Stone, glass, bronze, clean lines so sharp they felt almost ceremonial. Light fell in long golden sheets from hidden fixtures, touching certain surfaces while allowing others to remain in shadow, as if the room itself were choosing what deserved to be seen. It did not feel like the entrance to a home. It felt like the antechamber of a sanctuary, or a throne room, or a mausoleum built for a man still living. The thought passed through her with a chill she could not quite name. She took another step, then another. Every object seemed positioned not for comfort, but for impact. A long table of dark wood stood against one wall, severe and immaculate, holding nothing except a sculptural bowl of black stone that looked too heavy to move and too sharp to touch. Beyond it, a pair of chairs sat angled toward each other without warmth, their pale upholstery interrupted by bronze frames that resembled armor more than furniture. The entire penthouse seemed built around contrast, softness against hardness, gold against black, beauty against threat. And everywhere, the silence. It followed her like surveillance. Not simply because the place was empty, but because it did not feel empty. It felt watched. The arrangement of the room carried the unsettling impression that someone had stepped out only seconds ago and might return at any moment. Not a host, a ruler. The distinction mattered. Her eyes drifted to the art. At first, she only registered fragments, dark canvases framed in shadowed metal, a sculpture positioned beneath a shaft of light, a wall-sized piece composed of layered textures that looked almost like scorched velvet. None of it was decorative in any ordinary sense. It was aggressive, intentional. It did not ask to be admired. It challenged the eye, demanded submission, and remained unreadable unless one stood still long enough to let discomfort do its work. Then one piece caught her. It stood alone at the far edge of the room, placed where the light could touch only part of it. A sculpture nearly human in scale, cast in black and bronze. At first glance, it seemed abstract, twisted forms rising upward, all sharp edges and tension. But the longer she looked, the clearer the shape became. Two bodies, or the suggestion of two bodies. One kneeling, one standing above. The figure below curved inward, head bowed, spine arched as if beneath an invisible burden. The figure above was not fully formed, more a vertical force than a person, its features smoothed into anonymity, but its posture was unmistakable. Dominance, possession, judgment. One arm extended downward, not in mercy, but in claim. Isabella stopped in front of it without realizing she had crossed the room. The bronze surface had been worked so deliberately that it looked wounded in places, scratched and darkened, as though the sculpture had survived fire. In the kneeling figure's chest, a narrow incision had been cut through the metal, allowing light from behind to pass through like a blade. Sacrifice, power, transaction. Her throat tightened. The piece felt less like art and more like prophecy. A terrible thought came to her then, irrational and immediate, that Arthur had chosen this long before he knew her name, and yet somehow it had been waiting for her all the same. As if the entire penthouse, every surface and object, had been arranged over years not merely to reflect the man who lived here, but to receive the woman who would one day stand inside it and understand what it meant. She stepped back. The room seemed larger now, and her own body smaller inside it. Intruder, her mind whispered. The words settled into her bones with suffocating accuracy. Because that was what she was here. Not a guest. Not yet anything as intimate as belonging. An intruder in a private sanctuary built around obsession, discipline, and shadow. A woman who had crossed a threshold she could not uncross. Her gaze shifted again, drawn at last toward the windows. They dominated the far wall of the penthouse, rising from floor to ceiling in uninterrupted sheets of glass, so vast they seemed less like windows and more like an absence of boundary. Beyond them, New York stretched into the night in silver and blue, endless and glittering and impossibly far below. She moved toward the glass in spite of herself. The rug softened her steps until it felt as though she were floating. By the time she reached the windows, the city had already transformed. From this height, it no longer looked like a place built for human beings. It looked geometric, reduced, domesticated by distance. Roads became illuminated veins. Buildings became rectangular constellations. Movement on the streets below shrank into abstract currents of light. People were invisible until she searched for them. Then, faintly, she saw it, tiny movement at intersections, little clusters of motion crossing streets, lives unfolding so far beneath her that they may as well have belonged to another species. Ants. The word came coldly, not because the people below were small, but because this height required that kind of cruelty. It invited detachment. It encouraged the illusion that the world was manageable if one stood far enough above it. And Arthur did. He did not simply live in New York. He lived above it. Above its noise, its weather, its urgency, its humanity. Above compromise. Above interruption. This was not a residence. It was secession. A private kingdom suspended over the city, close enough to command it, distant enough not to be touched by it. A quiet unease moved through her chest, but beneath it something stranger stirred. Curiosity. Dark, unwelcome curiosity. What kind of man built a life like this? What kind of mind required ceilings this high, windows this vast, art this merciless, silence this complete? What kind of hunger arranged a home like a temple and then left it waiting in perfect stillness? She should have wanted only to leave. Instead, she turned from the windows and kept looking. That was when she found the glass. It sat on a low table near a seating area half hidden in shadow, where black leather and pale stone met beneath the glow of a single lamp. Crystal. Heavy-bottomed. Half full of amber liquid. Scotch, if the scent in the air had told her anything. One cube of ice remained inside, not fully melted but softened at the edges, as though it had been poured recently enough to still remember the hand that touched it. She stopped. Something about the sight unsettled her more than the art, more than the scale, more even than the windows. Because this was personal. Not curated, not symbolic, not architecture. Evidence. He had been here, perhaps only moments ago, standing exactly where she now stood, looking toward the elevator, waiting for the sound of its ascent. The thought altered the room immediately. No longer silent in the abstract, but paused. Interrupted, holding the shape of him in its emptiness. Beside the glass, a book lay open on the table. Not displayed. Used. Its spine faced upward, pages spread, abandoned mid-thought. She did not move close enough to read the title. She did not need to. The image itself was enough. He had not merely passed through this room. He had inhabited it. Sat here. Read here. Drank here. Waited here. Watched the door. A pulse of awareness moved through her. Had he imagined this moment? Her stepping out of the elevator alone, hesitant, dressed in crimson like a bruise against all this clinical grandeur? Had he stood near the window with his drink and calculated how long she would remain still before curiosity overcame fear? Had he designed even this, her solitude, her first impression, the exact balance of intimidation and invitation? The possibility should have frightened her more than it did. Instead, it pulled her deeper into that dangerous curiosity, that gathering sense that the man behind this fortress of glass and gold could not be understood in ordinary ways. Fear remained, yes, cold and undeniable, but it no longer stood alone. Something else had joined it, a dark pull, the desire not only to survive his world, but to decipher it. She hated that feeling immediately, yet it remained. She looked once more around the penthouse, at the intimidating grandeur of it, at the shadows arranged so carefully beside light, at the impossible calm of a space built to dominate rather than comfort. Haunted luxury, she thought. That was what this place was. Not dead, not empty, but inhabited by a will so strong it lingered in every material choice. The silence shifted. Or perhaps she only imagined it. But suddenly she had the unmistakable sensation that she was no longer alone in the sanctuary, even if she could not yet prove it. Her breath slowed. Her spine straightened. Every nerve in her body sharpened. She stood very still beside the half-finished scotch, suspended between instinct and fascination, between the urge to run and the far more dangerous urge to stay. Because somewhere inside this museum of shadows was the man who had built it. And for the first time since entering his world, fear was no longer the only thing she felt. The silence changed when she entered the main living area. Until that moment, the penthouse had felt like a mausoleum preserved at perfect temperature, too immaculate to be called empty, too deliberate to be called still. But here, in the vast core of Arthur Vance's private sanctuary, silence became something else entirely. It was no longer the passive absence of voices. It had structure, depth, a hidden machinery beneath it. The kind of silence that did not simply surround a person, but studied them. Isabella stopped at the threshold and did not move for several seconds. The room before her was immense, unfolding in layers of shadow, glass, pale stone, and dark wood polished to a near-reflective sheen. The ceilings seemed even higher here than in the foyer, not because they physically rose farther, but because the space opened so broadly that it erased the usual sense of domestic scale. Nothing about it felt made for ordinary living. The seating area, with its low sculptural couches and severe marble tables, looked less arranged for comfort than for controlled performance. The lighting was subdued, but not soft. It was precise. Golden in some places, cool in others, each pool of illumination defining territory rather than offering warmth. And somewhere within that vastness, hidden inside walls and ceilings and interfaces too elegant to announce themselves, the penthouse seemed to become aware of her. She took one step. A line of recessed light along the far wall brightened by a barely perceptible degree. Not enough to be obvious. Enough to be noticed. Her shoulders tightened. She turned her head slightly, scanning the room. At first, she saw nothing but designed smooth planes, bronze accents, shadowed corners. Then a faint movement caught her eye near the seam where one wall met the ceiling. A tiny lens recessed into a dark housing rotated almost imperceptibly, adjusting itself with the slow intelligence of a creature trying not to seem alive. Her pulse shifted. It was not a home security system in the ordinary sense. It was subtler than that, more expensive, more seamless. Surveillance refined into architecture. She moved again. This time another light adjusted. Not brighter exactly, but narrower, reshaping itself as she crossed into the room as though the penthouse were editing its own attention. The realization came cold and immediate. Nothing here was passive. The space did not simply contain her. It responded to her. Not for comfort, for tracking. A quiet disgust moved through her, followed almost instantly by something sharper. Exposure. She had the irrational urge to smooth her dress, to straighten her posture, to resist giving this invisible system any sign of uncertainty. The response angered her precisely because it arrived so quickly. Already, the room was training her body to behave. The thought lingered as she walked farther inside. The rug beneath her heels softened each step, but the silence of the place made every other sensation louder. The climate system whispered through hidden vents with a low, continuous breath. Somewhere behind the walls, unseen currents of electricity lived and moved and regulated everything: temperature, light, sound, security, air. She could hear none of it distinctly, and yet all of it together created a faint low-frequency hum, so subtle it might have escaped notice in any normal environment. Here, it became unbearable. Not because it was loud, because it was constant. A deep, almost rhythmic vibration just beneath perception, like the building itself was thinking. Breathing. Waiting. Beyond the glass, the city murmured at a great distance. Sirens softened by height, traffic reduced to a distant oceanic hiss. But even New York, that endless machine of sound, seemed subdued beneath the dominant hum of Arthur's tower. The world below still existed, but only as background. Here, his system spoke more clearly than the city ever could. She crossed the living area slowly, the sensation of being watched tightening around her with each step. The cameras were almost impossible to see once she stopped looking for them directly. That made them worse. She would catch one only at the edge of her vision, a minute shift inside a black glass panel, the faint red blink of a sensor gone before she could confirm it. A polished surface reflecting not just her own movement, but the possibility of some mechanism adjusting beyond it. The penthouse was not merely equipped with technology. It had absorbed it into itself so completely that the distinction between room and instrument had collapsed. She felt, with a hollow twist of understanding, less like a guest than a specimen. Not a woman waiting in a living room. A subject inside a controlled environment. A valuable sample under observation. The words surfaced uninvited. Inventory. The taste of it made her jaw tighten. She turned away from the open space and noticed the clock. It stood on a narrow shelf of dark stone built into the wall near the seating area, so minimalist it nearly vanished into the architecture. No frame. No decorative flourish. Just a glossy black surface with red numbers burning cleanly across it. 9:12. Then, 9:13. The digits changed soundlessly. Yet, she felt the transition like a click inside her chest. For a long moment, she stared at it. The clock was not large, but in that room it became the only truly moving thing. The lights breathed. The hidden cameras shifted. The air hummed. But the clock advanced with perfect certainty, 1 minute yielding to the next in a sequence so calm it felt cruel. Those red numbers carried none of the softness of ordinary timekeeping. No domestic familiarity. No sleepy glow from a bedside table. They looked surgical, authoritative, a countdown. She knew rationally that it was simply displaying time. Yet the longer she looked at it, the more impossible that interpretation became. Every minute felt transactional, measured against her. Each change of digit a reminder that her father's safety existed now on the other side of a bargain signed with her own freedom. Time itself had been itemized, bought, assigned value. 9:14. Her throat tightened. How long ago had she signed? How long ago had the papers been finalized, the decisions activated, the consequences set into motion? Somewhere in the city, perhaps at this exact moment, systems were already rearranging around her father's life. Calls made, pressures lifted, threats withdrawn. His relief might already be real. And here she stood in a room that tracked her movements and counted forward in red. The contrast was so sharp it almost made her dizzy. A minute ago, she had still belonged to herself, at least in the private geography of memory. Now even waiting had become a function inside Arthur's world. Even stillness felt owned. She tore her eyes away from the clock, and the hum of the building seemed louder for it. A faint shiver moved through her shoulders. Then, without warning, a screen across the room awakened. The black wall panel near the bar area flickered once, subtle, elegant, almost polite. Then a soft amber interface bloomed into visibility, illuminating the stone around it with a restrained glow. No startling brightness. No chime. Just the unmistakable activation of something that had been waiting for the precise moment to address her. Isabella froze. For one absurd second, she thought Arthur might appear there himself, his face emerging from the dark glass as if the penthouse had chosen to speak with his voice. Instead, the panel resolved into a minimalist display. White text, clean lines, no excess. At the top, centered and impossible to mistake, Isabella Duarte. Her breath slowed. Beneath her name, a schedule. A 24-hour sequence arranged with merciless calm. Refresh. Dress is in the master suite. Dinner at 9. Below that, later entries partially visible, as if the screen had more to reveal if she came closer. A time for breakfast. A meeting block. A notation regarding transportation. The structure of an entire life beginning to be drafted in front of her before she had even been formally welcomed into the room. She did not move immediately. The sight struck her harder than the cameras had. Because surveillance was one thing. A room that watched her, tracked her, adjusted to her presence. That was invasive, yes, but still abstract. This was personal, administrative. Her name at the top. Her body translated into sequence. Her immediate future transformed into instructions so streamlined they might have belonged to a corporate asset moving through a logistics chain. Refresh. Dress is in the master suite. Dinner at 9. The language was almost offensively efficient. No greeting, no question, no request, just assignment. She laughed once under her breath, though no humor touched it. The sound disappeared into the room instantly, devoured by rugs and engineered silence. An asset, she thought. Not even a person. A managed variable. An object with timing requirements. Or worse, an acquisition. Her chest tightened at the precision of it. She had spent her life organizing work, solving crises, making impossible decisions under pressure. She knew the language of schedules, of necessity, of prioritization. But there had always been one final freedom hidden inside all that movement, the illusion that she was the one arranging it. Here, that illusion was gone. The schedule on the wall did not invite cooperation. It assumed compliance. She stepped closer to the screen, drawn by equal parts anger and disbelief. The interface responded instantly, brightening a fraction as if recognizing proximity. More entries slid into view with frictionless grace. 9 p.m. dinner. 7 a.m. breakfast. 10 a.m. review. 11:30 a.m. driver. A life reduced into clean segments. A person made into inventory. The rebellion inside her rose at once, sharp, hot, instinctive. Her hand almost lifted toward the panel, not to touch it, but to strike it, to smear those immaculate letters, to erase her name from this polished command structure. She imagined pulling the cord out of the wall, if there was a cord, smashing the glass, leaving the schedule fractured on the floor in glittering pieces. But the image ended where reality began. The signature. Always the signature. Not as memory now, but as restraint. Because rebellion felt powerful only until it collided with consequence. And consequence no longer belonged to her alone. Her father. That was the chain Arthur had forged most effectively, not around her wrists, not around her body, but around the part of her that still answered to love. Any refusal now was not simple defiance. It was a calculation of risk. A test of how much strain the bargain could tolerate before it endangered the thing she had surrendered herself to protect. The knowledge sickened her. Because it worked. That was the most humiliating part. It worked. She stared at the instruction again. Refresh. Dress is in the master suite. Dinner at 9. There was something almost obscene in the civility of it. As if her transition into this world might be made elegant by good tailoring and polished language. As if coercion became less real when written beautifully on expensive glass. The hum of the penthouse deepened around her, or perhaps her nerves only amplified it. The air moved in its hidden channels. The lights held her in precise illumination. Somewhere above and behind and beyond her, cameras watched without blinking. The red digits on the clock continued their soundless march. 9:18, 9:19, countdown. The words settled in with fresh force. Not to an explosion, not to catastrophe, to dinner, to meeting him, to the next irreversible step. She looked around the living area again, at its intimidating order and automated intelligence, and suddenly understood something that frightened her more than overt cruelty ever could. Arthur did not need to shout to control a space. He built systems that made obedience feel inevitable. Rooms that anticipated movement. Schedules that appeared before a question was formed. Silence that pressed until resistance had to spend itself just to remain standing. A master of the clock, she thought. Not because he was punctual, because he understood that time, when arranged correctly, became power. And here, in the low rhythmic hum of his penthouse, with her name glowing obediently on the wall, and the next hour already decided for her, Isabella felt that power close around her with suffocating elegance. Her heart rebelled. Her signature held. And between those two truths, she remained very still, listening to the numbers change. The doors to the master suite were not hidden. They were waiting. Tall, double-paneled, dark wood with a finish so smooth it reflected light like still water. They stood at the end of a short corridor branching from the living area, set apart just enough to feel intentional. Private. Reserved. Not a place one wandered into by accident. Isabella slowed as she approached. Something in her body resisted. Not fear alone. Instinct. Because this was not just another room. It was his. The distinction settled into her chest with quiet weight. The living area had felt controlled, observed, structured. This felt intimate. Her fingers hovered near the handle for a moment. The scent reached her even before she touched it. Cedar. Warm. Deep. Grounded. Layered beneath it, expensive cologne. Subtle. Masculine. Not sharp, not overwhelming. The kind of scent that lingered in fabric, in air, in memory. And something else. Leather. Not decorative. Personal. She pushed the door open. The transition was immediate. The temperature shifted first, not colder, not warmer, but softer. The clinical precision of the living area gave way to something controlled in a different way. Dim lighting replaced the calculated brightness outside, shadows arranged deliberately across walls and surfaces, creating depth instead of exposure. The room was large, but it didn't feel open. It felt enclosed, not because of walls, because of presence. The ceiling lowered slightly compared to the rest of the penthouse, just enough to bring the space inward. The materials changed to dark wood panels, matte stone, heavy drapery framing massive windows now partially concealed behind sheer layers. The city was still there beyond the glass, but muted, filtered. This wasn't where he ruled. This was where he existed. The bed dominated the center of the room. Large, low, structured in dark wood and dressed in layers of silk sheets that caught the dim light in soft reflections. Everything about it was precise. No wrinkles, no displacement, no sign of rest. Not untouched. Prepared. She stepped inside slowly. The rug beneath her feet was even softer than the one outside, absorbing her presence completely. No sound. No echo. The door closed behind her without her noticing when. The silence returned. But here, it felt closer. Like breath. She turned toward the bathroom. The entrance was open, framed by stone and glass, revealing a space that barely resembled anything functional. It looked carved rather than built, walls of pale marble veined with soft gray, surfaces polished to a near-liquid sheen. The lighting was indirect, embedded within the architecture so that no single source revealed itself. The moment she crossed the threshold, the water started. A soft rush filled the air as the shower activated automatically, steam rising almost instantly, curling upward in delicate waves that blurred the sharp edges of the room. She stopped, watched it. Perfect temperature. No adjustment. No hesitation. The system already knew. A quiet unease slid down her spine. Not because it worked, because it expected her. She stepped closer to the mirror. It stretched across the wall, seamless and clear. Her reflection appeared slowly through the forming steam. At first, distorted, then sharper. She looked at herself. Really looked. Her hair slightly disheveled. The faint trace of exhaustion beneath her eyes. The tension still held in her shoulders, in the line of her jaw. And yet, still composed. Still beautiful. The contradiction unsettled her, because she did not feel composed. She did not feel whole. She felt divided, like part of her had remained somewhere else. Back in that apartment. Back before the signature. The steam thickened around her, softening the reflection again. She reached up slowly, her fingers brushing her cheek. Warm. Real. She stepped into the shower. The water fell over her instantly, steady, controlled, enveloping. It washed over her skin with precision, not force, not chaos. Even this felt engineered. A ritual. She closed her eyes. For a moment, just a moment, everything blurred. The penthouse, the deal, the silence, all of it softened under the rhythm of water. She let it run longer than necessary, not because she needed it, because she needed the illusion that something could be washed away. When she finally stepped out, the air wrapped around her again, warm, scented, controlled. She dried slowly, mechanically, and returned to the bedroom. That's when she saw it. On the bed, placed with absolute precision. A garment, not folded, displayed. The fabric caught the low light immediately. Satin. Deep, dark, almost black, but not entirely. There was color hidden within it, something rich and shifting depending on how the light touched it. A subtle wine tone beneath the surface. Controlled. Expensive. Intentional. It wasn't just a dress. It was a decision. The cut was flawless. Structured but fluid. Designed to follow the body without asking permission. The kind of piece that didn't simply clothe, it defined. She stepped closer. Slowly. Her fingers hovered just above the fabric before finally touching it. Soft. Too soft. It felt deliberate. Like it had been chosen with care that went beyond aesthetics. Understanding. Her size. Her shape. Her presence. The realization made her hand still. How? Her pulse shifted. Beside the dress. A note. Small. White. Handwritten. She picked it up. The ink was dark. The lines sharp. Not rushed. But not gentle. Controlled. She read it. Wear this. Do not be late. No greeting. No signature. It didn't need one. Her fingers tightened slightly around the paper. The words were simple, but they carried weight far beyond their length. Instruction. Expectation. Ownership. She exhaled slowly. Set the note back down. Her gaze moved again across the room. The bed. The shadows. The scent still lingering in the air. And suddenly, the truth settled in fully. This wasn't preparation for dinner. This was preparation for presentation. A controlled unveiling. Her skin prickled. Not with fear alone. Something else. Awareness. Because beneath the discomfort, beneath the resistance, there was something darker. Curiosity. About the man who had built this. Who had chosen this? Who had written those words with such effortless certainty? She looked at the dress again. then at her reflection in the distant mirror. And for the first time, she understood. Tonight was not the end of the negotiation. It was the beginning, and she was no longer just part of the deal. She was the centerpiece. For a long moment, she did not touch the dress. It waited for her, spread across the silk sheets like something alive beneath stillness, absorbing the low amber light of the room and returning it in quiet, controlled reflections. It was not merely placed there, it was positioned, measured, as if the space around it had been arranged to elevate its presence, or her submission to it. Isabella stepped closer. Slowly, the fabric revealed itself in layers the nearer she came. At first glance, it appeared black, but it wasn't. It was something deeper, something more deliberate. Crimson, but not the kind found in flowers or paint or soft, romantic illusions. This was darker, denser, predatory. The color shifted beneath the light like blood beneath skin, alive, controlled, restrained beneath a surface that refused to give everything away at once. Vance read. The name formed in her mind without invitation. Her fingers hovered above it, then touched. The texture was immediate. Silk, but heavier. Structured. Reinforced with something beneath it that gave it shape, control, intention. It moved slightly under her fingertips, but not freely. Not soft in the way comfort is soft. It resisted, like it had memory. She lifted it carefully from the bed. The fabric slipped through her hands with a weight that surprised her, not physical heaviness, but presence. Like it carried purpose with it. Like it had already decided how it would sit against her body before she even put it on. She let her robe fall. The air of the room brushed against her skin. Cool, measured. For a second, she stood still, between versions of herself. Then she stepped into it. The fabric closed around her immediately. Not gently, not forgiving. Precise. It followed her shape as if it had been designed with intimate knowledge, every curve anticipated, every line accounted for. It slid over her skin with controlled elegance, but there was something else beneath that sensation. Something tighter, restrictive, not painful, but present. Like a quiet pressure that never fully released. Her breath shifted slightly as she pulled it higher. The structure of the dress guided her movements, not the other way around. It demanded posture, alignment, stillness. It wasn't clothing. It was discipline. She reached for the zipper behind her back. Her fingers found it. Cold, metal. She pulled. It moved halfway, then stopped. Her hand stilled. She tried again. Slower, more controlled. The fabric resisted slightly, the angle forcing her arm into an unnatural position. The design was deliberate, impossible to close cleanly without assistance. Her jaw tightened. She adjusted. Tried again. The zipper moved another inch, then resisted once more. A quiet frustration built in her chest. Of course, nothing in this place was meant to be done alone. Not the doors, not the systems, not even this. A dress that required someone else. Her pulse sharpened. For a brief moment, the instinct to stop, to tear it off, to reject the entire ritual, rose sharply inside her. But it collided with something stronger. Reality. She exhaled slowly, adjusted her grip, and forced the zipper the rest of the way up. It closed. The sound was soft, but final. The dress tightened around her fully now. Complete. Her shoulders shifted slightly as she adjusted to it. The fabric held her in place, not rigidly, but with expectation. It shaped her posture, controlled her movement. It did not allow collapse. She turned toward the mirror and stopped. For a moment, she didn't recognize the woman looking back. The crimson cut through the shadows of the room like a blade. Her skin, pale beneath the deep color, seemed sharper somehow. more defined, more deliberate. She looked dangerous, not fragile, not broken, controlled. Her hand lifted slowly toward the vanity. The makeup was already there, arranged, perfect. Foundation, powder, lip color, brushes, everything placed with the same meticulous precision as the dress. She sat. Her movements became slower now, intentional. Each touch against her skin felt like part of something larger. A ritual. She applied the foundation first. Even, controlled. The brush moved across her cheekbones, blending, smoothing, erasing signs of fatigue, hesitation, uncertainty. Then the eyes. Darker, more defined. Each stroke sharpened her expression. Not soft, focused. The lips came last. She hesitated for only a second before picking up the color. Crimson. Not identical to the dress, but close enough. She applied it slowly, carefully. The color settled into place like a seal. When she looked up again, the transformation was complete, but something unexpected lingered beneath it. Power. She inhaled quietly, because she felt it. Not given, not offered, activated. And that frightened her more than anything else, because she should have hated it. But she didn't. Her gaze dropped to the final piece, the jewelry. A single object rested beside the vanity. Dark, minimal, a choker. Obsidian black metal with a subtle sheen, its surface smooth but heavy in appearance. It looked simple, too simple. She picked it up, cold. The metal absorbed the warmth of her fingers slowly, like it resisted being touched. Her breath slowed. Then she lifted it to her throat. The clasp closed with a soft click. Instant. The weight settled against her skin immediately. Not heavy, but undeniable. A presence. Her fingers brushed against it instinctively. The cold remained, and the thought came without hesitation. A collar. Her pulse shifted again. But this time, she didn't remove it. She stood, faced the mirror fully, and stared. The woman looking back at her was no longer uncertain, no longer divided. She was something else entirely. Constructed, refined, weaponized. A slow breath left her lungs. If she was to be placed in this world, then she would not enter it weak. Her eyes sharpened. The rebellion inside her didn't disappear. It changed, adapted. If she was to be his prisoner, she would be the one he could never control completely. The most dangerous version of what he had created. Her gaze shifted toward the door. Still closed. Waiting. The clock. She didn't need to see it to feel it. Each second moving closer. 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 9 o'clock. Her body stilled. Perfect posture. Controlled breath. Expression unreadable. The mask settled into place. And this time, she didn't resist it. She chose it. For several seconds after the clock turned, Isabella did not move. She stood in the center of the room with her hand resting lightly against her side, the obsidian metal at her throat still cold against her skin, the crimson fabric drawn close around her body like a second pulse. The master suite had already changed her. Not physically, that part had been obvious in the mirror, but somewhere deeper, in the architecture of her awareness. The room had wrapped around her, dressed her, sharpened her, then released her into the next part of the ritual. Now only the door remained, the boundary between preparation and presentation. The last private breath before the performance began. She turned toward it slowly. The handle caught a muted line of amber light. Beyond it waited the rest of the penthouse, the hushed immensity of Arthur's world, the dark geometry of his private kingdom, the spaces designed not merely to be entered but endured. For one fleeting second, she imagined staying where she was, refusing to open the door. letting the appointed hour pass in silence, forcing him to come to her instead. The thought flared brightly, then dimmed under the old, brutal truth. The deal. Always the deal. Every act of rebellion now had weight far beyond pride. She could no longer afford the luxury of impulsive defiance. Not when the signature still lived between her and every consequence she could not yet measure. She opened the door. The hallway waited in dimness. The transition was immediate, almost physical. The bedroom had been warm in its own dark, intimate way, close, scented, enclosed like the center of an animal's den. The corridor beyond felt cooler, wider, less forgiving. The lights had been lowered so severely that the architecture seemed built more from shadow than material. Thin lines of recessed illumination traced the base of the walls and picked out the path ahead with measured restraint, as if the penthouse had decided exactly how much visibility she deserved. Everything else remained in darkness. Not blackness, not blindness, something worse. Partial revelation. Enough light to guide her forward, enough shadow to remind her that the house did not need her to understand all of it. The floor shone beneath her like dark water. Polished stone, almost black, reflecting the low lights in trembling ribbons that made the surface appear liquid from a distance. When she stepped onto it, the illusion deepened. The crimson of her dress flashed briefly in the reflection below her, broken by movement, appearing and disappearing like a wound dragged over still depths. Her first step felt monumental. Not because of its sound, because of its finality. The click of her heel cut through the corridor with cruel precision. Sharp, isolated, unsoftened by voices, by music, by any ordinary domestic noise that might have diluted it. The sound seemed to travel impossibly far, touching the walls, the ceilings, the closed doors, returning to her thinner and more severe. She took another step, then another. Soon the rhythm established itself. Click. Silence. Click. Silence. The hallway absorbed everything else. Her breathing became part of it almost immediately. Measured at first, then slightly shallower as the length of the passage stretched before her. The corridor was not truly endless, yet something about its proportions made distance slippery. It narrowed and widened in quiet, calculated ways. Sightlines shifted. Angles deepened into shadow and then opened unexpectedly onto alcoves, glass cases, panels of dark wood, architectural recesses holding objects too valuable to belong anywhere ordinary. Labyrinthine, she thought. Not confusing in the literal sense. Designed to create anticipation. Designed to make arrival feel inevitable. She kept walking. As she moved farther from the suite, the house began to reveal more of Arthur's collection, not all at once, but like a hand slowly turning cards over one by one. The first case stood inset into the wall behind museum-grade glass, illuminated from above by a thin, restrained wash of light. Inside rested 3 antique blades mounted on black velvet. Not decorative imitations. Real things. Their edges were old but immaculate, their handles dark with age, one inlaid with silver work that looked almost ceremonial. Even behind the glass they radiated a kind of preserved violence. She slowed without meaning to. The blades were beautiful in the way dangerous things often are when stripped of context. Elegant curves. Meticulous craftsmanship. Death translated into art, then captured and displayed. Preserved not for use, but for possession. Her gaze moved to the small engraved plaques beneath them. She did not step close enough to read. She did not need to. The point was already clear. Arthur collected force. Refined it. Framed it. Owned it. The next display held watches. 6 of them, arranged in perfect alignment on a pale, suede-lined surface. Their faces glimmered faintly in the low light, obsidian, silver, deep sapphire. Some looked modern, severe, engineered down to the smallest impossible detail. Others were older, mechanical, almost regal. Every one of them had been chosen, preserved, and positioned with the same relentless care as everything else in the penthouse. Time, she thought. Of course. The man who scheduled human beings on glowing screens would collect time itself behind glass. The realization tightened something in her chest. These were not hobbies, not decoration. They were declarations. Beautiful things immobilized, maintained, and made obedient. Weapons, hours, rarity, history. All the objects in the corridor carried the same underlying logic. If something possessed value, Arthur did not merely admire it. He contained it. Her pulse quickened. She continued on, passing another alcove filled with rare books sealed behind transparent panels, their bindings old and dark, their spines softened by age and wealth. The lighting there was warmer, almost reverent, as if the corridor expected devotion before knowledge. The books looked untouched not because they were unloved, but because they had become too precious for casual use. Again, that same principle. Beauty transformed into artifact. Preservation as control. She wondered, with a chill that reached all the way through the silk and skin and bone, whether Arthur saw people the same way. Not everyone. Not the world at large. Only the ones he considered worth keeping. The thought landed too cleanly to be dismissed. Her heels struck the floor again. Click. The sound pulled her back into motion. She tried to count the steps after that. It came to her not as strategy, but instinct. A way to occupy the mind before it turned against itself. To keep fear from expanding into images it could not survive. To prevent the corridor from becoming less a hallway and more a sentence unfolding in space. 1, 2, 3. She matched the numbers silently to the rhythm of her walk. 4, 5, 6. At 10, her breath snagged. At 14, she lost count. She started over. The exercise did nothing except sharpen her awareness of her own body, the heartbeat in her throat, the restrained tension in her shoulders, the exact pressure of the obsidian at her neck, the way the dress held her spine upright whether she wished it or not. She kept walking. Somewhere beyond the walls, hidden inside the guts of the tower, the penthouse breathed its low electrical hum. The climate system moved air through concealed vents with a distant, steady whisper. Far below, New York still existed in softened frequencies, sirens blurred by altitude, traffic reduced to a faint oceanic pulse. But those sounds only made the interior silence seem more complete. They reminded her that ordinary life continued elsewhere, beyond the glass, beyond the schedule, beyond the terms of her surrender. Not here. Here there was only anticipation, a thickening pressure in the dark. The corridor bent slightly, and then she saw it, light spilling across the floor ahead. Not broad, not bright, just a concentrated gold unfolding from a doorway at the far end of the hall. It touched the black stone like molten metal, turning the polished surface into a fractured mirror. The closer she came, the more the contrast intensified, dimness behind her, illumination ahead, as though the corridor itself had been built as a funnel leading toward one inevitable point. Her mouth went dry, because now the end was visible. Not abstract, not distant, real. And in that pool of light there was another shape, a shadow. Long, still, human, cast from within the dining room and stretched across the floor toward her feet. She stopped. For one suspended second, the entire penthouse seemed to stop with her. The shadow did not move. It did not need to. She knew. Arthur. She did not yet see his face, only the dark silhouette of his form implied by the angle of the light, the line of shoulders, the suggestion of height. The controlled stillness of someone waiting without impatience, because impatience belongs to men who are uncertain of being obeyed. Something primal stirred in her chest. Fear first. Pure, old, instinctive fear. Not the civilized fear of contracts and signatures and social ruin. Something older. Animal. The body recognizing another body at the center of its own territory. A predator waiting in light while she approached through shadow. Her heartbeat rose hard against her throat. She could feel it above the edge of the choker, beneath the pulse in her skin, a frantic knocking that seemed impossibly loud in the vacuum of the corridor. And beneath the fear, that other thing, that darker, more humiliating thing, attraction, not softness, not trust, nothing so gentle, a pull toward danger, toward power so concentrated it altered the atmosphere around it, toward the man whose presence could be felt before it was fully seen. She hated it instantly. Hated the way her body registered him as a force before her mind could translate him into anger. Hated that fear and fascination could occupy the same breath. Yet they did. The light ahead trembled slightly across the floor as she resumed walking. Slowly now. Painfully slowly. Every step an act of will. The house seemed to watch more closely the nearer she came. The displays receded behind her. The dim corridor narrowed into a final stretch of dark stone and gold. Her reflection appeared in fragments beneath her feet, broken by shadow, reassembled by movement. Crimson, black, light, silence. She thought of her father, not as symbol, not as obligation, as a man. A tired, flawed, beloved man who might even now be breathing easier because of what she had done. The image steadied her for exactly 2 steps. Then another thought came. When this is over, what will be left of me to save? It struck with enough force to nearly stop her again, because until now she had been speaking to herself in the language of endurance. Survive tonight. Survive the dinner. Survive the arrangement long enough to protect what matters. But the corridor, with its glass cases and preserved violence and measured light, had shown her something uglier. Survival was not a single event. It could become erosion. Slow, elegant, invisible. A woman could walk into a world like this with all her edges intact and still emerge, weeks or months later, curated into something quieter, more polished, more obedient. Containment disguised as luxury. Surrender disguised as transformation. Arthur's shadow waited on the floor as if to answer her. She reached the last few yards of the corridor. Now she could see more than the shadow. The edge of the dining room table. The glow of pendant lights suspended over black stone. The suggestion of crystal. Dark walls. Reflected amber. A room arranged for ritual rather than nourishment. And his silhouette. Not fully. Not yet. Just enough to make her body understand that the lion was indeed there, just beyond the threshold, silent and aware and already in command of the space she had not yet entered. She drew in a breath. Held it. Released it carefully. The mask she had built in the mirror returned to her by force of necessity. Her shoulders settled. Her expression cooled. The panic in her heartbeat remained, but she locked it beneath posture, beneath stillness, beneath the defiant elegance of the crimson skin he had chosen for her. One more step, then another, until the light from the dining room touched her fully, and the corridor behind her seemed to fall away like the narrowing passage of a trap already closed. She had reached the end. Or perhaps, she thought as she crossed into the edge of his shadow, only the beginning. And with that final, measured breath, Isabella stepped toward judgment. The room looked less like a dining room and more like a verdict. Light did not fill it. It hovered. Low pendant lamps poured a muted amber glow over black stone, crystal, and silver so polished it seemed untouched by human hands. The rest of the room remained surrendered to shadow. At the far end of the long table, a man waited beside a chair he had not yet taken. He stood perfectly still, not welcoming, not warm, simply present in the way powerful men often are, like the room had been arranged around his existence, and everything inside it, from the candles to the silence to the woman now standing at the threshold, had entered his orbit long before it understood the cost. For one suspended second, neither of them spoke. His gaze moved over her slowly, not hungrily, not crudely, precisely, like an appraiser standing before an acquisition too rare to touch carelessly. The dark red dress she wore caught the low light and returned it in slow, controlled flashes, the color shifting like blood beneath lacquer. She had put it on alone. She had fastened the clasp at her throat with steady hands. She had built the mask she now wore with deliberate care. And still, under his eyes, she felt the unsettling truth of it. The transformation was complete. He did not smile. Something colder passed through his face. Approval, perhaps, or satisfaction sharpened into restraint. Then, at last, he moved. One step forward, measured, unhurried. The distance between them changed at once, though he remained several feet away. That was the nature of certain men. They did not need proximity to alter the air. "Sit," he said. Just that. No greeting, no softness. The command was quiet, but the room obeyed it before she did. She crossed the final stretch of polished floor and took the chair indicated for her. The sound of the legs moving lightly against stone seemed indecently loud in the room's suffocating calm. He sat opposite her only after she had done so, as if the ritual required her placement first. Between them, the table gleamed like a line drawn in law. Porcelain, crystal, silver, a narrow arrangement of black flowers she did not recognize. Everything exquisite, everything severe. A server appeared soundlessly from the edge of the room, placed the first plate before her, then vanished with the same airy efficiency. The dish itself was delicate to the point of insult, thin slices of fish translucent under a sheen of oil, scattered herbs, tiny pearls of citrus, edible petals placed with surgical precision. Luxury designed to look effortless. She lifted her fork. The metal touched porcelain with a faint click that seemed to echo. Across from her, he watched. Not casually, not politely. He watched the angle of her wrist, the way she held the stem of her glass, the pause before she tasted anything, the measured control of her breathing. Nothing about his attention felt social. It felt forensic. She took a bite. The flavor bloomed cold and expensive across her tongue: salt, smoke, acid, something floral she could not name. Under any other circumstance, it might have been beautiful. Here, it tasted like strategy. Silence resumed. It did not settle between them. It thickened. She became aware of every sound in microscopic detail: the whisper of fabric when she shifted in her chair, the controlled inhale before she raised the glass, the soft contact of silver against china, the low ambient hum of hidden systems moving through the walls. Outside, somewhere unimaginably far below, the city continued its restless motion. But here in this room, time had narrowed to the movement of two people pretending this was dinner and not an interrogation conducted with crystal and candlelight. He set down his glass. The gesture was small. The effect was immediate. Her pulse answered before he spoke. "How does it feel," he asked, "to begin your new life?" The question was simple. That made it worse. Not because she did not understand its meaning, because she understood too many meanings inside it at once. New life, new rules, new ownership, new confinement disguised as salvation. She looked up at him. His expression revealed almost nothing, but his attention had sharpened. He had not asked to fill the silence. He had placed a blade in the middle of the table and wanted to see whether she would pick it up. She rested her fork down with deliberate care. It feels, she said, like expensive packaging around a hostage situation. The answer landed cleanly. For one heartbeat, the room seemed to contract. Then the faintest shift touched his mouth, not a smile, but the ghost of private recognition. As if defiance, when intelligently delivered, pleased him more than obedience ever could. And yet, he said, you accepted the terms. Her spine straightened. For someone who needed my agreement, you seem very eager to call it consent. The silence that followed was razor-thin. He leaned back slightly in his chair, one hand resting near his glass, the other still. The pendant light above him carved his features into planes of gold and shadow, making him look less like a man at dinner and more like a portrait of controlled appetite. You misunderstand me, he said at last. I'm not interested in what you call it. His gaze held hers. I'm interested in whether you intend to survive it intelligently. Her throat tightened, though she refused to let it show. The next course arrived. A small plate. Dark sauce. White porcelain. Meat so tender it nearly separated beneath the pressure of the knife. Something seasonal. Something rare. Something chosen not just for cost, but for effect. She barely tasted it. The table had become a field of signals. Every bite delayed or taken too quickly could be read. Every glance measured. Every silence interpreted. Across from her, he seemed entirely at ease inside the tension, as though this atmosphere, this exquisite suffocation, was not something he had created for the evening, but the natural extension of his mind. Your father is safe, he said. The knife in her hand stopped. He had not raised his voice. He had not softened it either, just placed the fact before her. A gift. A reminder. A leash. She looked up slowly. You say that like I should thank you. No, he said. I say it because you should understand what my protection costs. Something in her stomach turned cold. The room was too warm. The candles too steady. The silver too bright. She forced her hand to move again. And what exactly am I supposed to be now? She asked. A charity project? A debt repaid in installments? His eyes darkened, not with anger, but with focus. No. He set down his fork. You are not a guest. Each word arrived with terrifying composure. You are an investment. Her breath went shallow. He continued before she could answer. And I always protect my investments. The sentence did not sound threatening. That was the most frightening part. It sounded like doctrine. Like something he believed with the same certainty other people reserve for sunrise. She should have recoiled. Instead, something more dangerous happened. She understood him. Not fully, not safely, but enough. Enough to realize that in his language, protection and possession might be separated by nothing at all. The meal continued, though neither of them seemed interested in food any longer. Dessert appeared untouched between them, something exquisite layered in dark chocolate and gold leaf, too beautiful to destroy, too decadent to feel innocent. The wine caught candlelight like liquid garnet. Somewhere midway through the final course, she lost all sense of sequence. There was only his gaze, the suffocating elegance of the room, and the quiet certainty that this dinner had never been about appetite. It had been about calibration, testing, seeing how much pressure she could absorb before she cracked, and whether she would break in fear or sharpen. At last he stood. The movement rearranged the room. She remained seated for a fraction of a second too long, then rose as well. The chair behind her made almost no sound. She wished, absurdly, that it had. Some crude noise to puncture the unbearable refinement of the moment. He came around the table slowly, not circling like a predator in any obvious, theatrical way. That would have been easier to resist. No, he moved with the calm of a man who had no need to hurry because the outcome had already begun. By the time he stopped in front of her, the room felt smaller than the elevator had. The scent of him reached her first. Not one note, but layers. Dark wood. Expensive cologne warmed by skin. A trace of whiskey. Something cleaner beneath it, sharper, almost cold. The combination should not have felt intimate. It did. She hated that. Heat radiated from him in a way the carefully regulated penthouse never did. Not dramatic warmth. Not enough to touch. But enough for her body to register the distance between them as fragile. He looked down at her, close enough now that she could see the exact stillness in his face. The restraint. The obsessive control required to make even silence feel dominant. And beneath it, something else. Recognition, perhaps, of what she had become in the dress he chose, of what she was trying not to reveal. Her pulse beat hard against the metal at her throat. He noticed. Of course he noticed. His hand lifted not to touch her, but to brush one finger beneath the line of her jaw, just enough to halt before contact and let the nearness do the damage. Her breath stalled. "Tomorrow," he said quietly, "you learn the first rule." The words slid through the air like silk over a blade. She forced herself to speak. "And if I refuse?" For the first time all evening, something unmistakable entered his expression. Pleasure. Not kindness. Not amusement. A darker satisfaction, like he had been waiting for exactly that question. He leaned closer, just enough for his voice to find the space near her ear. When he spoke, it was nearly a whisper. And whatever he said there, whatever promise, warning, or rule he placed against her skin, stole the answer from her before she could give it. The screen cuts to black. The story continues in the book.